Welcome to episode 111 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. Sports are almost back, believe it or not, after months and months and months of sitting around, waiting, trying to figure out what to do to pass the time, trying to figure out what to do to replace that giant hole in our lives without sports. We have sports back, at least we think. Baseball is returning later this week. The NBA also later this month. Hockey is right around the corner as well. So things are coming back, and the NFL is starting to roll out some plans that they want to get things back on track, or at least started on schedule. So we obviously have a ton of stuff to talk about this week, and it's not just with sports returning. There was some huge news this past week. I'm sure everyone listening can already guess that the big topic this week is going to be the Washington Redskins, not just their name change, but then the big Washington Post expose that came out later in the week. That kind of dominated the sports news this week. But with sports right around the corner, we do have to talk about the NFL. I didn't really want to talk about this, but I threw it in here anyway. But Matt Judon did not get a long-term extension by the deadline, so he will play the 2020 season on his franchise tag. Obviously, the NFL releasing a statement. They have a timetable of when training camp's going to start, but right before we started recording here on Sunday, a lot of tweets are coming out from NFL players across the league. This seems to be a coordinated mass, tweet barrage from all these players, similar to what we saw from baseball players during their, disputes with the owners a couple months ago. And then Orioles are starting on Friday, so there's quite a bit to talk about. Some unfortunate injuries took place, but we also have two players that returned after being out with the coronavirus. And John Means, also the biggest news of the week. He is dealing with some issues that he dealt with last year, a bit of a dead arm. So I won't waste any more time. Let's get right into it with the Washington Redskins. We'll start with the name change because that happened first on Monday. We expected this to happen. The statement was released a couple weeks ago. We talked about it at length on the podcast. They released a statement, said that they were going to look into their name, imaging, branding, to pretty much everyone that said a name change is coming. It wasn't official at the time, but you don't release a statement like that unless a change is coming. It would have been just an atrocious look to release a statement like that and then keep the name. So we all knew a name change was coming. And now this past Monday, that became official. The Redskins name is going to be retired. We don't have a new name yet. The Redskins don't have a new name, but I would assume that it would have to be done pretty soon. I'm guessing they want to get this done before the 2020 season begins. Because they're going to have new uniforms and just everything. Stadium stuff's going to have to be changed, the field, merch, whatever. I mean, they've got to completely rehaul everything, and they don't have a lot of time to do it. So I would hope they had a new name picked out already, and there's just some legal things that they're sorting out right now. Because if they haven't decided on a name, they're running out of time. We do know that they're going to try to keep the same color scheme, the burgundy and gold. There's been some names floated around out there. I think Red Wolves is popular, Red Tails, another popular one, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. I know there's some people out there that have scooped up the copyright on certain names years ago, anticipating a name change, so I'm sure that's part of the legal process. But the last thing I'll say here, because I just really don't have much new to add, I would reiterate everything I said a couple weeks ago. I think a name change is long overdue. The term Redskin is just, it's directly referring to a stereotype of the way Native Americans look. Their skin is not red. Like, it's just, it would be the same as naming your team after something from Asian culture and then having the mascot with skin as yellow as a Simpsons character. Like, it's the equivalent of that. And no one would sign up for that. Everyone would have a problem with that. So this is no different to me. It's the same reason I said a couple weeks ago that the Indians removed their Chief Wahoo logo. That was probably a year or two ago at this point. They got rid of that. It was a caricature of a Native American with bright red skin. Yeah, I mean, this was, we'll get into the bigger news with the Redskins. It was quickly overshadowed, but still, this is a landmark moment, a monumental moment in sports history. And I'll turn this over to Ian. You mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Could be an opportunity to kind of step in a new direction because they have been a terrible team for a while. So they got a new coach, a new identity. This could be a way for them to move on from their, losing history.
Yeah, and then we can get into some of their other history in the second part of this. I mean, I think it presents a big opportunity for Dan Snyder and the Redskins organization to come up with a new name, rebrand things, and kind of get themselves figured out a little bit. I think there's definitely some soul searching that needs to go on within that organization. But just basing this particular conversation on the name itself, like you said, it's time for the name to go. I think they should be able to keep the color scheme. I do think that the team should do something, maybe just for the season ticket holders to help them get new gear and get the name out there. There's a lot of different ways you can be really successful with a rebrand like this. But the Redskins have proven over the years to be just a factory of dysfunction. I won't use factory of sadness because that's the Browns terminology that they like to use. But they've been one of the more dysfunctional organizations in the league, and it started with the name, it started with the ownership. So I think getting the name changed and getting the logo changed is a step in the right direction. I've got a lot of really close friends that are big-time Redskins fans, and they're excited about the changes. We'll get to the second piece of information here next. But it's been a busy week for Redskins supporters. Hasn't been a very fun week, but if we're being honest, they haven't had very many fun weeks over the last 10 or 15 years, that's for sure.
Yep, and with that came this big Washington Post expose. I mean, I have a lot to say about this, and a lot of it doesn't even have to do with the contents of the story. I mean, it was just a crazy week leading up to this. I want to say as early as Tuesday. It was only like a day after the name change news had come out. You saw some NFL insiders, beat writers, whatever, hyping up this incoming expose, this incoming, a piece that was going to come out in the Washington Post that was going to dig up all this dirt on the organization as a whole. A lot of people were saying that this was going to be the downfall of Dan Snyder. And that led to, it was days waiting for this because the Post was getting everything together and making sure they had the story put together properly and all the facts correct and, it's written well and all that. So I guess I commend the Post a little bit for making sure they didn't rush anything here or not feeling pressured to rush things. But that's about as little praise as I can give them, but I'll get into that in a second. All the people hyping this up, I just don't get it. It seems so counterproductive to create this, Twitter storm, this mass hysteria, this hype surrounding something that ultimately ended up being really sad. It feels weird in hindsight, like knowing the contents of the article and what was revealed here. It's just not a good look when you have all these people like, ooh, something big's coming later this week, and they've got, emoji eyes tweeted next to it like we're talking about an NFL trade rumor or something. Like, no, we're talking about real people here, real women that were sexually harassed, verbally, physically, what have you. That's not something I'm putting emoji eyes next to. And you're probably going to have people respond to that and turn around and say, well, we didn't know the actual specifics of it. We just knew it was going to be bad. Well, then what's the point of tweeting if you don't know what's coming? You're just tweeting just to create a buzz. Like, I don't know. To me, it was just unnecessary to have all this hype and build up to something that was, ultimately not a good thing. Needed to come out, absolutely. Like, it's a great thing that this came out and people had eyes on it, but I don't know. I just didn't really like the method by which this went. And there was people locally in Washington, like people that cover the Redskins every day, that were tweeting out, yeah, the Post is going to write something, but I have zero details about this. So when someone that covers the team every day has zero details about what's coming, how does someone on a national level know? Like, not to call out names or anything, but like someone like Adam Schefter or Rappaport, like, or Mike Florio, like, why would they know something if the guy that covers the team every day doesn't know anything? So that's just kind of where I stand, and all the tweeting was unnecessary and created a mass hysteria. I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't know. I feel like it's not as important as the actual story, but as a journalism student and someone who still has kind of a passion for it, surprisingly, just kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, I think what I gathered from the situation is that people knew something was going to come out. They knew it was a big deal. They could have taken an option not to say anything, or not to even give any foreshadowing, not tweet out anything at all. But what a lot of them did was, as you said, put the emoji eyes about the big story coming out of Washington, this, that, or the other, all this hoopla. And I think a lot of the reason they didn't want to say anything was because they wanted the Washington Post to get the credit for the story. They're the ones who did the legwork. They're the ones who put the effort and the time into it. I think a lot of people felt it would be undermining their efforts and kind of, stealing some of their shine off this story. I think that's the explanation that most people who tweeted about this but wouldn't give details would give. Now, there's obviously the other option there, Nolan, as you said, which is to not say anything at all. You don't have to talk about the story at all. I think it's just a lot of these people, there's such a rush to be relevant, and there's such a rush to be first and to look like you've got the best sources, that if, let's say, Schefter didn't tweet anything about this and everybody else was talking about it coming out, there's the idiots out there. They'd be like, oh, Schefter's losing his touch. He doesn't have the inside information like he usually has. And fair or unfair, that's something that these journalists and bigger national personalities have to deal with. As far as the local folks, they knew what was going on, and what they probably wanted to do was avoid, taking some of the shine off of the Washington Post and the story that they had. They can say they had no idea what was going on, but I think of it, like you said, a little bit opposite. I think of it as, if the national people are getting their hands on some of the details of this story, I find it hard to believe that the local media didn't have their hands on a little bit of the information that was kind of going on. And plus, to be honest, like, all this really is an extension of the story that broke 2 years ago. Not to say that it doesn't matter and there hasn't been more issues since. It's kind of just an extension of those allegations that came out. But I do think, like you said, it kind of made the actual issue and storyline here kind of become second place for a while. I think people are now starting to realize how serious some of these accusations, and honestly how true some of them have turned out to be. So I hope that they use this, as a chance to kind of get back on the right track. Like, I can't imagine being a fan of a football team and not being proud of the organization that I support. Even when the Ravens, they've had bad years, and I've always been proud of the product they put out there, the effort they put in. They're a well-respected organization across the league. I'd hate to be in one of those bottom 5 organizations across the league, which is definitely where the Redskins reside.
Yeah, I have one more journalistic issue with this, and it deals with the Post. Credit to them for releasing this and being the outlet that gave a voice to these people. I'll give them credit for that because it was necessary. But you kind of, I don't want to say ruined that, but you did some damage to that by putting this behind a paywall. And I don't want to hear any crap from people in journalism or who are avid supporters of journalism about how you have to pay for it. And I get that. Like I said, I studied this. I have a passion for it. I still care about it. I'm not doing as much writing as I thought I would be doing at this point. I'm doing more radio stuff, but it's all journalism. And I think for a story of this caliber, while having a paywall is not a bad thing for a website like the Washington Post or the Baltimore Sun or the New York Times or something, when you have a national story that appeals to not just the entire country, but globally. There's people all over the world that were interested in this. You can't hide that behind a paywall. You have to give everyone access to that. Everyone deserves to be able to read a story of this caliber. Because at the end of the day, by putting this behind a paywall, not intentionally, but the end result here is that you are, preventing people from putting eyes on or hearing these women tell their story. They could go, I like I said, I give you credit for being the platform that published this, that ran this story. But quite frankly, anyone could have done that. Any outlet could have ran this story. It didn't have to be you. And there are plenty of outlets out there that would have ran this for free and been able to spread this information that deserves to be spread. People deserve to see this and hear this and read this for themselves. And you're hiding it behind a paywall. And I don't want to hear the argument, it's only $1 and you should pay for journalism. I support that. But there's certain stories that are different. If the New York Times does this all the time. There's articles that they release that are huge national stories. They're big breaking news that aren't behind their paywall because they know everyone's going to want to read it. The Washington Post masthead at the top of their print paper, and I know at the top of their website, says democracy dies in darkness. Take your own advice here. Stop keeping people in the dark.
Yeah, that's pretty hypocritical.
Stop keeping people in the dark when it comes to women telling their story. The whole point of this story and this expose was these women, the 15 in question, finally being able to speak out after feeling like they were pressured into silence for years. And they finally get to speak out, and they're doing on a big platform that they think everyone's going to get to see. And now this story that, again, I don't think it should have been hyped up this much throughout the week, but it was. People were waiting for days on this to drop. It finally comes out, and you click on it, and you have to pay for it. No, it's ridiculous. I don't support it at all. People can disagree. I don't care. I thought it was scummy. I didn't pay for it. I found a proxy, so I was able to read the whole thing. But if you felt compelled to pay for it, so be it. But I did not pay for that because that's a load of garbage, in my opinion.
Yeah, admittedly so. I haven't read the article. I didn't even know it was behind a paywall until you just mentioned it now. I've been on vacation, so I've kind of been a little bit unplugged from the world to a certain extent. I'm with you. I mean, if it's a story that's this important, you've got to let people see it. I think it's just it's a money grab at that point. It's something that is built to be just as beneficial for you as it is for the victims, and actually bringing light to the situation and kind of putting some corrective measures in place. It's more of a, hey, check us out. Like you should pay money and read our website. Like, I agree that it's kind of a cheap plug in a way for a story that really doesn't deserve a cheap plug. There are much better ways to do that. So I agree with you. While I'm not as passionate about it as you are, I do think it's a little bit of a money grab and a cheap move on the Washington Post part. But
so yeah, without any more delaying here, I had to get that off my chest. But the important thing here is the contents of the article, and I will say there's a lot here. It's very dense, but I think it's well written. So like I said, I would recommend, if you feel compelled to pay for it, go ahead, because I feel like a lot of people, were waiting on this. They saw it was behind a paywall, and now they didn't actually read anything, and they're just basing their opinions off of a headline here or what other people are telling them. No, you need to go read this for yourself because this is a big deal. Anyway, well written, very dense, so I won't regurgitate everything here because it's a lot. But we have 15 women here that have worked for the Redskins or in proximity to the Redskins, whether it's in the media or what have you, that have come forward here with allegations, but is being spearheaded here by a woman by the name of Emily Applegate. I believe she's the only one here who has used her name or revealed her identity. So first and foremost, kudos to them. Salute to them, and especially Applegate for, coming forward and then not being anonymous and putting your name behind this. It's not a very easy thing to do. It's not easy to even do this anonymously sometimes. So salute to all of them. But let's get into the accusations because there's a lot of them. Again, I would just say read this for yourself, because the biggest thing I took away from this is there was a handful of people, and they all had from different roles within the organization. I mean, we had someone that worked on the radio broadcast, the voice of the Redskins, Larry Michael. You had people in the front office. You had, who's this guy? Alex Santos, the team's director of pro personnel. I thought he was the biggest creep out of this whole thing. So if you do get the chance to read this, they have his picture in there. And if I could say so myself, this Alex Santos guy, obviously a creep based on what's being alleged against him here, but if you just look at his picture, I mean, this guy looks like the type of guy to say, "Where's my hug at?" He's that type of guy. So in reality, he was even creepier than "Where's my hug at?" He was going way farther than that. But yeah, I mean, there's all the names that were named here. Like I said, Alex Santos, Larry Michael, Richard Mann, Dennis Green, Mitch Greshman. They all came from different corners of the organization. So this expose was a widespread thing. It showed that it was indicative of the entire franchise's culture. It wasn't just one person. It wasn't just one creep acting alone and people enabled him. This was a widespread thing, and it was running for decades throughout the organization. And like Ian said earlier, this is kind of an offshoot or a continuation of something that came out a couple years ago about the cheerleading squad and them doing a calendar shoot down in, I don't know, the Caribbean somewhere. It doesn't matter where, but, the NFL teams do that all the time. They do the calendar shoot or a photo shoot with the cheerleaders. They do it down at the beach or something. But the Redskins ended up selling or allowing their suite members, the people that own suites and boxes in the stadium, to go down for the calendar shoot. And then the cheerleaders were forced or, strongly suggested that they better, do this or they're going to get fired, to be kind of their escort for these people for the night. Not in a sexual way, but go accompany them to dinner and, spend time with them. And they're not getting paid for it. They weren't even getting paid for the photo shoot. They were literally, the only thing they got paid was their hotel room and their food. So they're not even getting paid for the photo shoot. So then to have forced them, again, force in quotes because it's implied force, but it's still bad and it's still dangerous, to go and do something out of their job description is just ridiculous. So again, it's been going on for years. Based on what was revealed years ago, what we know now doesn't seem like a stretch at all. I think we've all just kind of accepted that, yeah, this is probably happening. And the last thing I'll say on this is that, while Dan Snyder wasn't, explicitly incriminated in here, it's his organization. He's the owner. So at the end of the day, I think when a lot of people were saying this is what's going to take down Dan Snyder and this is what's going to get him out, there's nothing explicitly incriminating here towards him. But as we know, when it comes to these, exposés or scandals in the sports world or any walk of life, more will be revealed through time. This is not the first story that came out about the Redskins, as we just said. Probably won't be the last. So if time goes on and it can be proven that Dan Snyder knew about this or even had a hand in it, then yeah, his head's going to roll at that point. But based on this article alone, I don't think he's looking at anything more than a fine. I could see Goodell stepping in and kind of bringing the hammer down a little bit just because it's kind of what people want. And no one really likes Dan Snyder anyway. So I could see him, being a little excessive with his force. But as far as removing him as owner, I don't see that happening off of this. But I think it could be a Penn State situation where it wasn't immediately revealed that Joe Paterno knew, but then through time it was, and then at that point it was okay, let's take down his statue and get him out of here, get his, likeness and the praise for him out of here and the mention of him out of here. I think a similar situation could happen over time if more is revealed, and as I said, I do think more will be revealed. So, yeah, I mean,
I'll start off by saying, obviously, all the allegations are pretty severe and pretty heinous, if we're being completely honest. The main thing I wanted to hit on here is I don't believe that Dan Snyder did not know about this. I am not going to be naive enough to say, oh, he didn't know. The other thing too is isn't it called like kind of like ignorance is not bliss in this case. Like whether he knew or not, it's still unacceptable. I'm not calling for him to be removed as the owner of the team or anything silly like that. But I think people kind of willing to say, well, there were no specific allegations against Snyder, so he must be clean. Like, I'm not willing to personally take that leap. The other thing I want to say about this, too, is wherever some of these people are getting off calling for Dan Snyder's head, specifically who was involved in a huge scandal of similar, I guess, storylines of sexual harassment within his organization, who are you? Like, I'm kind of over Mark Cuban in general. He says a lot, and none of it's usually particularly productive. He always kind of ducks and dodges any allegations against him, but he's so quick to condemn someone else. To me, he's just about everything that's wrong with owners in sports, and I know people love Mark Cuban, but seeing him kind of come after Dan Snyder, like, this is a moment for him to be taken out of the... Are you kidding me, dude? Like, do you not remember? I think it was 3 to 5 years ago when the sexual harassment stories from inside of your organization came out. Like, don't throw stones if you live in glass houses. That really rubbed me the wrong way. And I can't stand Dan Snyder. I think he's a terrible owner. He's proven to be one of the worst owners in the league. Having this go on under his nose is completely unacceptable. But my main takeaway from this is I want to see how he responds. Does he, take a more hands-off approach and bring in some better football people to improve the organization, both on the field and off the field? Getting a good culture in that team. Because if you remember, there have been countless quotes over the years, people saying, the culture is damn good. I think that was him or the former general manager, Bruce Allen, said that. The culture is damn good. Well, it's not. And everybody who's anybody could see that except for the people at the top of that organization. So I hope they get their shit figured out. And again, you just think of all the people who've been victimized by them and hope that they get whatever help and counseling they need to live as normal a life as they're going to be able to live.
And speaking of kind of the responses here and moving forward and a culture change, there's one person I feel bad for in this besides the women who are alleging this or the alleged victims here. Ron Rivera just kind of waltzed into a complete shit show we knew it was a bad organization and they were a terrible football team and they needed to be fixed from a coaching standpoint. But now he's the head coach of a team that's under fire here. They changed their name. He's just walked into this burning building, so to speak. And while I don't want to say he didn't have to release a statement, but because he is the head coach, so I think it is pretty standard. But I found his quote here, and I'll read it. This is in wake of the Washington Post article that came out. And I don't know, some people might just chalk this up to a PR statement or whatever, but I found this to be pretty genuine, so I'll go ahead and read it. He said, quote, "Biggest thing is that we have to move forward from this and make sure everybody understands we have policies that we will follow and that we have an open door policy with no retribution. Plus, my daughter works for the team, and I sure as hell am not going to allow any of this." As I said, I found this to be very genuine, found this to be a very strong statement. In a time where, generic carbon copy PR statements are just the norm, Dan Snyder had one of those released on his behalf. There's no authenticity to it. There's no reason to believe anymore that this is how this person truly feels. But I don't know. I found Ron Rivera's statement here to be, while short, and that might only be an excerpt of what he said as a whole, but that portion I found to be pretty strong. And while I don't envy him for walking into this, I think to go off of what Ian was saying as a culture change, Ron Rivera seems like the right guy for the job here, to be the head coach of the team and lead this team forward from, not just an on-field standpoint, but kind of turning that franchise around and making them relevant again, making them something that fans can be proud of again. Doesn't have an easy job right now, but he is, I think he's the right man for the job.
Yeah, I mean, I've liked Ron Rivera. I always have. I thought he was a slam dunk hire for them. He made the most sense. I've heard a lot of people say this, and I agree with them. There's an adult in the room now. There's somebody that's going to have rules, enforce the rules, keep people accountable. But as we all know, that kind of depends on whether or not Dan Snyder's going to allow him to do that. I do think that he's the right person for the job. I do feel bad for him that he stumbled into what everybody knew was a mess, but is now kind of just becoming a hot mess, if we're being frank. They're in the news for all the wrong reasons. The name, the scandal, they're not very good. These are all things that are kind of going to be up to him to kind of right the ship. I do think if given the right amount of time, I would say probably 3 to 5 years. Probably 3 is the most he'll get. Unfortunately, he could do it. I think he has the ability to. I think they've got some decent young talent there. Anytime you can add a player like Chase Young, there's a chance to be a generational defensive player. You're going to give yourself a shot. But we'll see how it works out for him. I mean, I think he's the right guy for the job, and we'll have to see if Snyder can stay out of it and they can start kind of putting the pieces back together in Washington, because like I said, it's sad. It's sad when you turn on TV and you put the Redskins game on and there's 45,000 people there and 30,000 of them are cheering for the other team. That's got to be really tough for Redskins fans, especially season ticket holders. So I hope that Rivera and them figure it out. Never enough to beat the Ravens or become better than the Ravens, but I've got no real ill will towards the Washington football team, and I hope Rivera's the right guy for the job.
Let's stick with football here because this was some pretty recent news as of yesterday, dated here July 18th. Troy Vincent Sr., Executive Vice President of Football Operations, released this statement on behalf of the NFL. They have announced reporting dates for training camp. They said, at yesterday's league meeting, the membership was advised that under the collective bargaining agreement, the reporting dates for training camp this year are as follows. Rookies will report this Tuesday, July 21st, quarterbacks and injured players on July 23rd, and then all players by July 28th. These dates are applicable for all clubs other than Houston and Kansas City because they will be playing the opening game of the NFL season on Thursday Night Football, so they are actually reporting this week. All players, I believe, will be there at some point this week. They're getting a little bit early, more of an early jump than the rest of the league because they have the earliest start. Makes sense, but the big takeaway here is that, I don't know, I wasn't really expecting dates to be released this quickly, and that's one. And two, to have the dates be kind of at normal. Like, nothing is pushed back here. I believe July 28th would have been the date normally, like no coronavirus or anything. Like, this is so I mean, yeah, that's pretty surprising knowing what we know and the state that a lot of states across this country are in. I think we've been saying it for weeks now, that it just seems kind of, it's hard to imagine a training camp operating right now in late July. Like, we don't have much information here. All we have is dates, but, are the same rules in place that were, under question by John Harbaugh and other coaches a month ago? The stuff about wearing masks and maintaining social distance, how are we supposed to practice while social distancing? I mean, if that, I said it before, if that's what's truly best and that's truly what we need to do, then go ahead and do it. But that means you can't play football. You can't do both. So either we're going to abide by all the rules and social distance and do all that, or we're going to play football. You can't do both. That's just the facts. So the NFL is a sport where you're getting up in each other's faces, linemen are, getting in each other's grill on every single play. You got guys tackling each other on every single play. It's not baseball. And it's not the NBA, where the NBA has already put themselves in an isolated environment. The NFL can't do that. There's nowhere they can put all NFL teams in the same area and have them play games. It's just that can't happen like they're doing with the NBA. So they're in a different spot, and that means they've got their own unique issues they need to figure out. while they have the luxury of watching all these other leagues come back and figure it out on their own, and they can pick pieces from each one and see what works and see what doesn't, they have their own unique issues they need to sort out. So I don't know. I'm still skeptical. I feel like I've been skeptical this entire time, while I've been leading up to baseball, NBA, hockey, and now football. I will appeal to what you have said time and time again, Ian, and that is I will believe it when I see it. But right now it seems like a bit of a stretch that training camp will be happening as usual in late July.
Yeah, I was surprised to see there were no delays, no sort of, different plans in place for them to get things going. It seems like they're just acting like nothing's going to come of it, or that they're content with what they know and kind of forging on as if there is no pandemic, which I think is a dangerous precedent to set. But I don't know. If that's the way they want to go about it, we'll see. It seems like, as you said, the past 24 hours, especially the last, 10 to 12 hours, there have been a ton of NFL players basically commenting, we want to play, but there seems to be some real disconnects between the PA and the owners surrounding kind of what the limitations are going to be, how often are they going to be tested, things of that nature that seems like they still don't have figured out. So I think that the other sports that are closer to coming back, I'm getting more confident that they're actually going to. But again, as long as this virus is kind of raging on, we don't really know how long those leagues will be able to operate. And then, like you said, I'm still kind of living in a world where until I see the Orioles Friday night getting ready to take on the Red Sox, I'm not going to buy it. And the same goes for the NFL. As far as no delays and everything, I think that was a really weird way to go about it. But it seems like the players and the PA are kind of having it out, or the players and the owners are kind of having it out right now. A little bit similar to the baseball situation. It doesn't seem quite as dire, but I hope they get it figured out. And, nobody wants to see Ravens football more than I do. So I am ready to go. Hopefully we're able to get there, but it's all guesswork at this point.
Well, we're all excited for Ravens football, of course, and the Ravens are prospectively going to be a team competing for the Super Bowl this year, and they have, a window right now where they're trying to compete and win a Super Bowl, and you're trying to put all the pieces together, and a big part of that is the financial aspect. And when we get down to the finances of the team, there was a story this week. A lot of people had their eyes on Matt Judon as the deadline approached for players that were under a tag to get or work out a long-term deal until, I guess, the off-season starts is the next time that can happen. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. But the deadline passed, and Matt Judon, as I think we all expected, did not receive his long-term deal. So, again, no surprise there. But I wanted to bring this up because Judon, while he's been up to his usual antics on social media, and he had some funny stuff throughout the week leading up to the deadline, there was an Instagram post that he had, and I don't exactly know what the contents of the post were, but it's one of his most recent Instagram posts. Probably had something to do with maybe trolling the fan base here a little bit, or kind of alluding to not being here in the future or something. I don't know. It's really harmless at the end of the day. Got a lot of comments on it, obviously, and got a comment from some kid who said something to the extent of, why don't you just request a trade? We don't want you here in Baltimore. You clearly don't want to be here either. Something of that nature, not a direct quote. And Judon responded with this, and I don't think many people have seen this because, again, it was just a comment on Instagram. It kind of got buried. But he says, F you, but not censoring himself, just flat out says it. F you. I'm trying to be in Baltimore for the next couple of years, but they don't want me. Why are you on my page? I can't pay myself. Go to the Ravens or the front page. You blank. So there's the words of Matt Judon. So this is, I just wanted to bring this up because this always seems to be a thing with professional athletes. In the media and press conferences and everything, they say all the right things. And Judon himself has said these things where they get asked about a contract extension or getting the franchise tag, and he says, oh, it is what it is. It's all a business at the end of the day. I understand it. It's not personal. I want to be here. We're trying to work out a deal, but if it doesn't happen, it's just business and I'll get a deal elsewhere. They say all the right things. And then on social media, whether it's through a comment or a post or something subliminal or whatever, they reveal their true feelings, and they're always, taking it personally. They're always getting butthurt about something. And I don't understand why Judon would say, the Ravens don't want me, or would allude to that in any way. Like, get over yourself, man. You're a good player. You're not a great player. You're going to get paid by somebody. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be the Ravens. So I'm done with the whole debate about we have to wait and see what kind of year Matt Judon has, and then the Ravens are going to have a debate on their hands as to whether they need to pay him or not. No, they're not paying him. He could have 20 sacks this year. They're not paying him. As a matter of fact, the more sacks he has this year, the better year he has, he's increasing his price tag even more. So really the only way that there's going to be a debate for the Ravens is if he has another 9 to 10 sack type of year where his value doesn't go, doesn't skyrocket even higher, but it's still too high for the Ravens. And that's what I'm saying. They have all these prospective contracts on the horizon: Ronnie Stanley, Marlon Humphrey, Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown, and then Lamar Jackson being the biggest of them all. Matt Judon isn't even close to being in that group of guys, quite frankly. He's a good player. He's a good player to have. I'm happy he's going to be on the team in 2020. I thought giving him the franchise tag was the perfect move. You rent him out for a year, you try to win the Super Bowl, and then you let him walk next year. But I just don't understand why, and it's not just a Judon thing. It happens all the time with professional athletes. They talk in the media and they pretend that they're not going to take it personal, and they say that it's just a business, and then they clearly turn around and they show their true colors, and they're clearly taking it personally. Look, I'm not hating on Judon. Go get paid. Please, you deserve it. I will never come close to earning that much money in my life. So if you want to say I'm jealous, sure, whatever. Go get your money. But it's going to be from the Lions or the Jets or somebody. It's going to be from a team that's perpetually 7-9 or 8-8. It's not going to be with a Super Bowl contender. It's not going to be with a consistently good organization like the Ravens.
Well, I can't confidently say where he's going to get that deal and say that it can't be with a Super Bowl organization or that it can't be with the Ravens. But I do agree. I think eventually you just get tired of hearing guys. He's always trying to stir the pot, and people are like, oh, man, he's just being funny. Like, that gets old for some people. And I think you've expressed that it's gotten old for you. I know it's gotten old for some other Ravens fans that I talk to pretty regularly as well. Just shut up and play. You didn't get the deal done. It is what it is. You want to go get paid, have a big year this year, and somebody's going to give you that money. I don't think there's any evidence that the Ravens don't want him. I don't think there's any evidence that they think he's no good or they don't think he's worth it. They're paying him a ton of money this year under the franchise tag because they want him to be here, because they think he's a productive player. So I don't know where he's getting that thought from, but obviously you just hope it doesn't become a distraction once the games start, because it's definitely something that can get away from you in a hurry. So I hope he gets it figured out. I hope he stops talking. I'm not a big fan of very active social media members of NFL franchises anyways. It's kind of not my thing. So I understand that, he's worked up about it and that he has his feelings about it, but kind of just keep it to yourself. You'll get paid eventually, like you said, and if it's with the Ravens, great. If it's not with the Ravens, then so be it. But I think he should be happy to be where he is in life. But the problem is, Nolan, people aren't happy unless they're complaining about something. I mean, you know how that is. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, when I went into this and all his posts on Twitter this week, I just viewed it through his normal, joking and troll lens. Under the lens that he's just joking around. There was some people taking the, him tweeting, how's the real estate in Kansas City or something like that. I'm asking for a friend. Like, people were up in arms about that. To me, that's just clearly a joke. It is what it is. But this Instagram comment where you're clearly showing us how you feel, telling some kid who, again, it wasn't unwarranted. The kid said something stupid in his own right, but telling some high school kid, hey, F you, it's just kind of weird. Let's move on to baseball. It's coming back. sooner than you think. This Friday is opening day. I got my fantasy baseball draft taking place tonight. I didn't even expect to be playing fantasy baseball this year, but I'm excited. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to working some Orioles games very soon. And the first things first, we know it's going to be a different environment. No fans in the stands, but Major League Baseball has got a plan for that. They're going to be using fake crowd noise in 2020. Every stadium's going to be using this. And I thought this was interesting because it's been a conversation not just around baseball, but a lot of pro sports. Should they use fake crowd noise? Should they pipe it in? Should it just be part of the broadcast? Should it be in the stadium? How's it going to work? Well, we got our answer for baseball. And it says, Major League Baseball plans to play fake crowd noise through its ballparks and sound systems during games in the shortened 2020 season. The source of those noises is sound captured during games over several seasons for the video game MLB The Show. I found this interesting. When they developed the game, they send audio engineers out to the actual Major League Baseball stadiums and record raw sound. I thought that was interesting, and then that's what you hear in the game. So I think the sound, like when you play at Yankee Stadium in MLB The Show, is you're hearing the raw sound from Yankee Stadium. Same thing with Camden Yards. So, it says here stadium engineers will reportedly be using a soundboard with around 75 different crowd reactions. That's a lot. 75 different crowd reactions to pick from throughout the game. So it sounds like this is going to be done right. I saw a couple of videos. The Orioles were testing it out during their inter-squad games. A couple of the beat writers posted a video of it with the crowd noise, and it seemed pretty natural. It wasn't like clunky or it didn't fit. But my whole thing is like there's a lot of pressure on that soundboard guy. He's got to hit the right drop at the right time. He can't be hitting the home run cheer when we got a bunt single. It's got to be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always want to hear crowd noise. So if it's artificial, it's artificial. I'm definitely excited that the plan is to keep some form of crowd noise in the game. Most of the reason that I enjoy going to the game so much is I like to see the reactions of the crowd and hear how loud they get. So I was interested to hear about that MLB The Show thing, too. That's pretty cool. And we brought up Yankee Stadium. All I could think of was that stupid whistle sound whenever somebody strikes out, and that got me angry. So I appreciate you for bringing up Yankee Stadium. But no, it should be good. I'm excited for the Orioles to get underway, and I'm excited there's going to be some sort of artificial crowd noise pumped in to at least make it feel like it's kind of a regular game.
So, yeah, speaking of the broadcasts, that's going to be something to figure out. I know Massen's going to be broadcasting the exhibition games taking place over the next couple days to prepare for the start of the regular season, kind of a test run, not just for the players, but for the media as well. And one thing we just learned, that things are going to be a little bit different in the booth this year. Our two favorites, Gary Thorne and Jim Palmer, in my opinion, the dynamic duo, the best duo calling Orioles games. I don't think Ian agrees, but that's okay. They're not going to be in the booth this year. Both Gary and Jim are sitting out this year. Sounds like this was their decision. With a little bit of guidance from the organization. Both of them are getting up there in the age brackets, so it makes a little bit of sense that they would want to sit out and they want to distance themselves and come back next year strong as ever. But it is going to be a little disappointing not being able to sit down and watch Orioles games this year and not be able to hear Gary Thorne and Jim Palmer going back and forth and bantering. So we'll see. I mean, I'm excited for Scott Garceau to call some games. So I'm just a little bummed, to say the least. But mostly because we won't get to hear Gary Thorne try out his Masters voice again that he used during the fanless game in 2014. I was expecting that to come back in full force for the no fans in the stands in 2020, but I think we're going to have to put that on hold for now.
Yeah, that was a classic Gary Thorne moment. I'm not a big Gary Thorne baseball broadcasting fan. I know that's sacrilege to some, I think even including you. So I have no problem with him not being around. Also, if it's, he's concerned about COVID and he's a little bit older, same with Jim Palmer. I've got no problem if they want to take whatever precautions they feel they need to take to put on the best broadcast and keep their talent safe. I don't really like Gary Thorne announcing in the in the baseball realm. He was one of the best hockey guys maybe ever. But baseball is just not for me. So I'm okay with it. I'm not a big Bordick fan, but he's gotten significantly better over the years. And McDonald seems fine, at least when he's on the radio. So I'm excited. I think Scott's always been good too. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing his take on baseball a little bit more. He was involved with the football a while back as the voice of the Ravens. So I'm interested to see kind of what he can add to the fray. But overall for me, I'm just excited for them to get on the field and get this abbreviated season underway.
All right, let's round this out with some Orioles player news, some good, some bad. Start with the good. We got 2 players returning this past week from after sitting out the first part of the month. Was not disclosed until they returned, but Anthony Santander and Dwight Smith Jr., 2 Orioles outfielders that we got to see quite a bit of last year. They both tested positive for the coronavirus on the intake test, so when everyone reported back to summer camp or spring training 2.0, all the players took a test. These 2 guys tested positive, so they were away from the team for the past 2 weeks, and they both returned in the past couple days. They're starting to ramp up, get back on the field, and play more. And, this is great. I mean, we put 2 and 2 together when they weren't here for the first part of the month that they probably tested positive, and you just hope that they were okay and they were only suffering some mild symptoms, or maybe they were asymptomatic. I think Santander said he had some mild symptoms, but that's it. So that's good news, and looking forward to seeing them both play, particularly Santander, because I think he's going to be an everyday outfielder for this team. I think he can be, and hopefully Brandon Hyde can get him ramped up and ready by Friday to start playing him consistently. But it's good to have Dwight Smith back as well, because this was something we actually didn't have to talk about this week, but the Yasiel Puig rumors were circulating last weekend and early into the week that the Orioles were interested, that they made an offer. Him being a big-name player was a little surprising considering the Orioles' track record here so far under Elias. Not really the type of team that wants to sign a bigger-name player, but they had no outfield depth. I mean, they were playing some of these inter-squad games with no corner outfielders. And if a ball was hit over there, I think it was up to Brandon Hyde whether it was an out or in play. So, yeah, that just seems silly. Like, you need the depth there. So it's good to have 2, guys that were a consistent part of this team last year back in the fray.
Yeah, you're definitely more excited to hear that Santander is back in the mix. He's a little bit younger, too, so he could be a guy that's here for a little bit more of the long haul. Remember, Dwight Smith Jr. got off to that really hot start last year and then completely fell off the face of the earth after he got hurt. So I'm excited to see if he can kind of regain his form from the first half of last season. But Santander is definitely the highlight there. Guy who hit, I think, 25 or 30 home runs last year. Hit for good average, too. Defense wasn't great, but was adequate. So he's another guy in the mix in the outfield. I'm happy to hear they're both healthy. Didn't have really bad bouts with coronavirus. Not that there are any good ones, but some are definitely worse than others. So it's good to have those guys back. I know they've lost some guys already, and they've got some other injury issues right now. So having some good news is a plus for them. They've had a rough go of it so far, but getting those 2 guys back, hopefully they're up and running and can be in, especially Santander, can be in the opening day lineup.
All right, now to the bad news. We got some injuries. I'll start with, I guess, the worst ones from a longevity standpoint. But Ty Blach and Richie Martin, Ty Blach is definitely out for the year. He's elected to have Tommy John surgery. And Richie Martin, my guess is that he's going to be out for the entire season. Blach left a inter-squad game last week with some elbow soreness. Went and got a few medical opinions, saw a couple doctors, and he has opted to go through Tommy John surgery, which will obviously sideline him for all of 2020. Richie Martin, on the other hand, has a broken bone in his right wrist, suffered the injury while diving back into first base on a pickoff attempt. I think he said that when his hand hit the ground or something, felt discomfort, and then when it got it looked at, they revealed that it was broken, and he was kind of surprised that it was broken because I don't know. It didn't hurt that bad in the moment, I guess. But the point is that Martin is going to be out at least 2 months, maybe 3. So I think that, if he comes back in 2 months, we're going to start here late July. So, okay, so this point, we'll call it late July to late August, and late August to late September. Maybe he could come back with like a week or 2 left in the season, but at that point, it's kind of like, what's the point for a player like Richie Martin?
Well, we'll be 5 games in first place then. We won't need him.
You never know. And I guess also with that, Richie Martin is not, he's not Trey Mancini. He's not Santander even. So he's the guy that if this was a normal season, you'd have him in AAA right now. Working on his bat. Clearly the glove is there. He even turned in some web gems last year. I mean, the glove is major league ready, but he needs to get the bat figured out. And I'm not saying he's going to have a bat that he can be an everyday player in the majors, but if he can get just somewhat better where he's a utility guy, that would be great. A Rule 5 guy to turn into a solid utility player with the good defensive glove, a little bit of speed.
Perhaps the next Ron Flattery.
It's always good to have a type of guy like that on your team that can play multiple positions, that's got the speed, you can pinch run him, plays good defense. You always need a guy like that. So if Richie Martin can develop into that guy for the Orioles when they're relevant again, then so be it. But I don't know. I don't think he'll see the field this year. It might just be a thing where you end up saying, all right, just take the year off and we'll come back next year and make sure you're healthy. But that is a tough one, a tough injury for both of them, especially Ty Blach, because he is 29 years old, I believe. So, he's not blowing anyone away. Again, his ERA last year was 11.32 in 5 starts with the Orioles. But he's a guy in the past who's had an ERA around 4.5 with San Francisco and made plenty of starts there. So he's shown the ability that he can be kind of that fifth man, or not the fifth man, sixth man in the rotation, the spot start type of guy that you need in a long season. But last year he was not good for the Orioles. But it is disappointing at the age of 29. He's got to go through Tommy John, and now he won't have the immediate opportunity to bounce back after last year. But we'll close with the biggest news, and that's John Means. But real quick, any thoughts here from you on Richie Martin or Ty Blach?
I mean, it's 2 guys that they were probably counting on having that now they're not going to have. So it's just another wrench thrown into what Hyde has to work with. He doesn't have a ton to work with anyways. They don't have a ton of depth. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how he works it. I don't know who would then play short. I guess maybe Iglesias was probably going to start there anyway, so he probably would remain there. Not sure what they were going to get from Blach. At the end of the day, they're not huge injuries, but for a team that doesn't have a lot of depth and a lot of MLB experience depth, to lose 2 guys that played a relatively large role in what you did last year can't help things. And the Orioles have enough issues to deal with already. I jest that they'll be in the playoff hunt, but that's mostly just me being overly positive because I'm typically overly negative. So we'll see how it works out, but not a good thing to have guys go down, and you just hope they can stay healthy from here on out.
All right, and then the last bit of news here, we're going to end on a down note, but just the way it is. John Means was scheduled to start, I believe, today against the Phillies in an exhibition game. He was going to get the start in preparation for Friday. It's going to start getting him into the 5-day cycle, and he's going to skip his start today. Brandon Hyde said that he is just going to be rested. I presume that he's still going to be able to go on Friday, but as of now, he can't make a start in the exhibition game today. I think Tom Eshelman's going to get the start, and John Means is dealing with what they're calling a quote, dead arm. So this is something that both Hyde and Means, I think, are linking to the way he felt this time last year after the All-Star break, where he started to kind of stumble a little bit. He had a great first half. He was named the Orioles All-Star instead of Trey Mancini, and he represented the Orioles in Cleveland last year. And now this year, around the same time, dealing with the same injury, but the concerning and interesting thing is that at this time last year, he had pitched, he had made 14 starts and had thrown over 80 innings. Whereas this year, he's just got a few months of, training and working out, and now getting ramped up here in the month of July for baseball to return. So nowhere near the amount of workload he had at this time last year when he started to suffer these symptoms. And as we know, he was able to finish the season. He just had to miss a start or two, get rested some more, but his performance dipped a little bit. And now this year, I don't know. Is there cause for concern here? Because, again, unless he was going super hard in quarantine and, throwing off a mound like every day or something, I don't know. I think it's interesting that he's going through similar arm issues that he did last year when he was actually pitching in major league games.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you hear pitcher and arm soreness, arm tightness, arm anything, you can't help but go to the worst of situations. I think it's a big deal, especially if he misses Friday's start. Obviously, if they lose John Means for any sort of extended period of time, that leaves them with Alex Cobb, and Wade LeBlanc is really the only starters that they were counting on, that they can count on, and they don't even know what they're going to get from LeBlanc yet. I mean, Means is, for all intents and purposes, this team's ace. The guy you start opening day is typically going to be your best pitcher. So I think that would be a real shame if something were to happen to him. He actually had a more adequate second half of the season, I think, than I expected him to. One of my big concerns, as you said, was that he would have a hard time kind of duplicating that first half success. And he did. He did take a step back, but he still performed pretty well in the second half of the season. He's one of the guys I was looking forward to watching this year, even in an abbreviated season, just to see if he can prove that he's got consistent stuff. Not even number one stuff. They got some younger guys in the minors that have flashed that type of potential. Even if he could be a number 2 and a number 3 type starter, he's still relatively young too. Plus, it's just a cool story just to follow a guy that this time last year wasn't sure he was going to make the team, and now he's starting on opening day. I mean, that's a turnaround. So I hope that he's able to make the start, and I hope he's okay overall. I don't want to see him fighting through an injury all year or anything like that. So we'll see. I think there's definitely some cause for concern. If this was going to be a really good baseball team and they were relying upon John Means to help them compete for a World Series, I think this would be a bigger deal. But with them kind of expecting to be about a 20-win team, I don't think it's as big of a deal as it would be if they were a contending club.
All right, and we will leave it at that. A longer episode, but there was a lot to get in there, jam-packed full of news. But next time we talk to you, hopefully the Orioles are going to be in the midst of their opening series in Boston.
They'll be 1-0 or 2-0.
Well, hey, 2-0. Calling it right now. Get John Means and Alex Cobb both get the win. Both go 7 strong innings, a hit or 2, no runs. Santander's tearing it up, hitting dingers all over the place.
Chris Davis hits 4 bombs in the first 3 games. Calling it now.
How great would it be? Friday night, opening day, Chris Davis in his first at-bat just mashes one over the monster.
Yes, all for it. If he over the monster, opposite field over the monster, I will streak naked through Annapolis. That's where I'm going to watch the game Friday.
All right. Well, as you always say, nothing is impossible. So start sweating. All right. We'll talk to you next week. Baseball will be back. NBA on the horizon. Hockey on the horizon. And I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about next week. Very excited. Thanks for listening.